is off here. You ready to go, Cameron? All righty. Well, for everybody on the call, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Chad Harmon. I'm one of the partners here at A&I Financial Services. If you are new to our firm, we are a small boutique wealth management firm. We work with a small number of successful folks just like yourself, and our goal is to both grow and protect your investments and help give you more choice and control over your taxes. A few housekeeping items before we begin. We will be recording today's presentation so we can share that with the broader audience. We ask that everybody keep their video off during the presentation, as well as putting themselves on mute. If you do have questions, please either use the chat feature in the lower middle portion of your Zoom window or write down your questions. Cameron will be taking those at the end. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Topic today is college funding strategies and hacks. And I could not be more excited to introduce one of my favorite people on the planet, Miss Cameron Morgan, who has been passionate about this topic for many, many years. I will brag about Cameron for a little bit here. She started her educational career at Northwestern, where she received her bachelor in journalism, and eventually ended up earning her international MBA through DU. Here in town. So she is excited to not only talk about saving for retirement, but helping you save on college, not just for college, and be able to pay for college in a way that's not robbing your own retirement plan. Before I go ahead and hand things over, I will let you know that at the end, after our Q&A, we will give you a reminder that we put on these educational events at least once a month. The next two we have coming up are going to be on November 4th, focusing on long-term care planning. Presenting will be Francois Giguère and Stacy Frank. We will follow that up on November 17th with our tax tips for the year, and Mr. Carl Frank will be presenting there. So please join us. Let us know if you're interested, and we'll make sure we get those invites out to you. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Cameron.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Chad. I'm going to quickly cover my own face up with our presentation today. If you don't already have a notepad and a pencil or pen, please definitely grab one. There are going to be a lot of details that I'm going to go over, and you'll want to at least make a note so you can follow up and ask more detailed questions for your specific situation. Also, this might feel a little bit like math class. It's not supposed to feel like math class. Some of the graphs and charts I'm going to show are just for the concept only. You're not going to be quizzed on like what percentage did college tuition go up in 2021. It's just really to show you directionally or thematically or strategically some of the driving forces in higher ed today, and to kind of set the stage for specific strategies that your family can use to help navigate that. Did anyone have any questions before we start? Or maybe put a little yes in the chat if you're doing okay, and we'll dive in. From current slide, there we go. And there we go. Okay, so kicking it off, college funding strategies and hacks is where we are. And there's my bio, which Chad already covered. We've got some detailed contact information and articles that I recommend. You don't need to write all this down. We can send this to you afterwards, but just know that our website is a great place to start for some of these articles. And right up at the top here in blue is my email address if you want to follow up afterwards. So this is our agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about the context. As I mentioned, I'll give you some very big picture information about the costs and calculations of college. The costs are pretty visible, but the calculations are a little bit of a black box. They're family by family. So we want to understand not just what it costs, but how much we're expected to pay. And then we'll talk about three strategies. The first is College Invest. We'll do a little bit of myth busting around that. We'll talk about this idea of getting pre-approved for college, the way that you get pre-approved for a mortgage. It's a similar large expense, and it's best to know before you go. Last but not least, we'll talk about the College Opportunity Fund, which is for Colorado students attending universities in Colorado, not just state universities, but almost any of our universities have this College Opportunity Fund. So that's some free money you may not know about. So jumping in, again, big picture concept. If you look at the blue bars on the left, You can see college costs since 2011 have gone up by 28%, but total financial aid's actually decreased in the same time period by 1%. Who do you think fills the gap? If you're looking at yourself, you are correct. Why can colleges get away with charging so much more? Well, look at this. This is how much more our students earn when they learn more. So finishing high school only results in average earnings just under $40,000, but getting a professional degree results in average annual earnings of over $150,000. So the universities understand this return on education, and they're asking people to really pay up to get access to these higher earnings. Is it worth it? We'll have to see. Always beware of averages. Not all professional degrees pay the same. Not all bachelor's degrees pay the same. You know that. So this is a key question, and for those of you taking notes, I would say draw this circle real quick, or you could draw it as a 2x2 grid, and just imagine or estimate what type of family you are from a financial aid perspective. So in the upper left quadrant, we have students who are high merit and low need. That's a lot of my clients and their kids. They have nice high GPAs, good test scores, and their families have a good amount of assets. But similarly, there are people with high merit and high need in the upper right quadrant. They're going to have slightly different strategies in applying for colleges. On the lower left-hand side, we have low merit, low need, and that would be a question about, is university the right postgraduate path for that student? And similarly, on the lower right, low merit, high need, we may be looking at other pathways after high school graduation, whether it's professional education, military. There are a lot of different routes that people can take besides the traditional university path. And it's smart to know where you're starting from before you figure out what you should pay for. So to challenge you on which quadrant you're actually in, have a look at this grid. This is one of the places where we are going to actually look at the details, not just the shape of the graph or the table. So in this grid, I've put in a bright yellow lightning bolt in the upper left that income has a much bigger impact than assets on what you're going to be expected to pay. It doesn't mean you can pay it. It just means that a black box calculation known as the U.S. Department of Education, that their online calculator thinks you can afford this. Now, whether you can or not without robbing retirement is a whole different question that they don't really get into. But if you look at the intersection of these numbers, and for instance, for a family who has saved money outside of their home and outside of their retirement accounts of $200,000, so that'd be brokerage account, bank account, 529 plan, they've saved $200,000 and their family income is $150,000. The U.S. Department of Education says, regardless of where you go to college, we think you can free up about $42,900 a year to pay for college. They don't ask you if you really can, afford that, spend that. That's just how the black box works. So if you have a different amount of savings, let's say you took $100,000 from your $200,000 and you paid down your mortgage. That takes $100,000 off the table. If you're still earning the same, you're saving about $5,000, $5,500 a year in college. That's by putting taking $100,000 out of the picture. So you can see that assets don't make such a big difference. If you were unfortunate enough to get a raise after paying down your mortgage, you're now on the hook for $45,000 a year for colleges. And that's at $175,000 of annual earnings. So it's heavily weighted toward income. Here's some kind of attempts to make a formula for it. Parents' income, as you can see on the left, is considered about a quarter to a half. So the income is going to be a huge driver of what they think you can pay. Assets are only assessed at about 5.5%. So whether you have money that you put in a 529 plan or you have it sitting in a brokerage account, it's viewed the same, and it's not viewed as aggressively as income. Student income, on the other hand, is considered very accessible to pay for college, but students get a protected amount of almost $7,000. So that lifeguarding job is going to help. It could pay for pizza and spirit wear. It could pay for tuition, but it's not going to be part of the expected family contribution unless the student's earning more than $7,000 a year. On the other hand, student assets are assessed much more aggressively by the universities. They look at UGMAs and UTMAs, especially, as being 20% available each year. That means if you have a balance in an UGMA or an UTMA of $50,000, that's going to increase your expected family contribution by $10,000 per year until it's spent down. So a strategy there would be to use that money first, if you can. So the EFC, again, it's not the amount you will pay. It's just used to calculate how much you're eligible to receive based on what they think you can pay. So based on that table and this formula, are you still in the same quadrant? Are you still in a high need quadrant, or are you now in a low need quadrant? If you're in a high merit, low need quadrant, and you were before, you still are, hang on, because we're going to have definitely some techniques that we can use regardless of which quadrant we're in to save money on college. I'll pause there for a second if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question, or if you want to, I don't know if I can see the questions. I think you have to unmute for me to hear you. No? Okay, we'll soldier on. So if you're in this upper left quadrant, where your student is high merit and low need, these bullet points will give you some tactics and techniques you can use starting in high school to wisely spend money and wisely approach the college selection process. So looking for non-need merit aid, obviously, would be a first approach. Merit aid is based on their talents and test scores often, and GPA, and not based on need. So it's need blind. Private scholarships often don't take need into account. School selection is going to be really important. Some schools do not give any merit aid, and they're typically the highly selective, often private universities. So if you have high merit and low need, school selection is going to be very, very important. If you play all your cards getting into the school, there are no cards left for merit aid. Test prep, this is an area where you can go ahead and spend some of that UTMA money and increase your test scores. A higher test score can often result in merit aid, and it's a component you can control. So spending money on test prep is okay when you're in this quadrant. And then tax aid, we'll talk about Colorado Section 529 college savings plans. That's one example of tax aid. Similarly, if you're low merit, low need, school selection is going to be very important. Spending money on test prep is going to help you, and tax aid is for everyone. The techniques, if you're high merit, high need, is looking for schools that say they will cover 100% of need. And there are a lot of highly selective schools that do that. They are need blind at admission, and they're looking for high merit is assumed. Merit aid can still be a tactic for you if you're in this quadrant. Private scholarships, test prep, and then EFC reduction. That's what I mentioned a moment ago with lowering your assets by paying down a mortgage, for instance, or by funding your retirement plan, by taking money out of visible areas like brokerage accounts, savings accounts, and 529 plans eventually, and putting it into places that are not considered available, like retirement accounts and your primary home. That's how you reduce your expected family contribution. So if you have high need, you can make that need look even higher with EFC reduction. Likewise, for students who are low merit but high need, looking for schools that state they meet 100% of need, getting timely applications in will be very important, and that EFC reduction strategy wherever you can. Anything you can do to lower that EFC is going to help you get more free money, basically. So that's the context. Those are some of the calculations. We're going to jump in with three of my favorite facts about College Invest, our state 529 plan. So the slide's kind of tiny. Just focus in on this area, this green check mark. 529 plans can be used for some things and not others. They can be used to pay tuition and fees. They can be used to pay room and board, books and supplies, special services, computers, and related equipment. So if you don't have enough money in your 529 to pay for all of those things and you're going to be cash flowing some of college, consider putting that money into the 529 for a short period of time, roughly 2 weeks, and then taking it out. So that is allowed, and any of these expenses should be paid for that way, that you can pay for whether it's from savings over the years or from cash flow from current earnings. Things you can't pay for with a student loan, or sorry, with a, 529, you can't pay off your student loan after the fact. In Colorado, you can't pay K through 12 tuition. You can in other states, and you can't pay for apprenticeship programs. One of my favorite parts, I put a little star right here to remind me about affordability. That's something that there are two very generous scholarships that make college more affordable that are part of the Colorado Department of Education. One is a matching grant. That's for children ages 8 and under. If you put in $1,000, the state of Colorado puts in $1,000. So that makes college more affordable. You can do that up to 5 times. So you could find yourself with a $5,000 contribution for your elementary schooler over 5 years, and the state is giving you $5,000 as well. So that helps. For students who are in college, and Beth, this might apply to your daughter for next year, in August and September, the state of Colorado offers a scholarship. You have to apply for it through College Invest, but it's $2,000. And if your student has had a 529 open for 4 years, so it has to be open for 4 years. If you don't have a College Invest college savings plan, I would say open one ASAP. The account has to have been open for 4 years, but it's essentially a $2,000 scholarship. It doesn't seem to have any academic requirements at all. It's for families whose EFC is below $45,000, which, as we saw, is a family earning about $175,000 with $100,000 in assets. So for a lot of current students, that is a great deal. The applications are open in August and September. They're pretty automatic, but it does close. It's closed now for this year for current students. So you have to be a current student. So that's an area of affordability that I think our state is basically handing out free money. You just have to go get it. Getting pre-approved for college, this is a little more, there's a 5-step process that mimics a mortgage application process, a mortgage pre-approval process. And I do think it only makes sense. What I often see, and I think we did this ourselves back in 1987, the college tour. We went off and looked at the schools that I had applied to, and a lot of parents today go and look at schools the kids might want to apply to. And the colleges have figured this out. So you walk on campus, it's beautiful. The rec center is a multi-million-dollar, giant, fantastic place that anyone would enjoy spending time. And the kids are like, I want to go here. And so the problem with that approach is you get some heartbreak and some disappointment when you find out that the price tag for this gorgeous school is more than you can afford. So having an idea of your family's 4-year college funding plan before you go look at the schools can really help avoid heartbreak and difficult conversations. So know before you go is the idea here. So this looks kind of complicated, but focus on the purple box here. We have 5 components. There are 5 inputs, 5 sources of money for college, and there aren't any more. There are just 5. So we're going to figure out how much this sample family has in each of these 5 categories. So the categories are parent resources, parent loans, spoiler alert, we want this to be 0, student resources, student loans, spoiler alert, I'm not anti-student loans, and then other help. We're going to walk through each of these 5 sections, but for each one of your kids going to college, they're going to have these 5 sources of money, and they're not going to have more sources of money. So knowing how much you have available to pay for all 4 years is the most important first step. We'll walk through this first part of parent resources. So these are the components of parent resources. 529 savings for this student, other assets that you might be able to free up for college for this student, and monthly cash flow. A lot of parents forget about this. My son is a first-year student at a university, and our grocery bill dropped a lot when this varsity athlete left the house. I'm paying, of course, the university to feed him, but I've got monthly cash flow of, let's say, $400 a month between all the expenses I paid for him that I now don't have to spend on him for groceries and lacrosse fees and his random allowance things. I guess we still pay for, but don't forget your monthly cash flow. It's okay to repurpose that money that you're saving One area that we had forgotten about was we were paying our son's car insurance, and the minute he left, we sold his car. So that was easily $200 a month less that we're paying in car insurance. All that money can go into this monthly cash flow line, and assuming they're going to be in school for 48 months, you can put a number between $10,000 and $20,000 right here. The American Opportunity Tax Credit is part of that tax scholarship that we talked about earlier. If your family's income is below $160,000 AGI, you get a tax credit of $2,500 a year. So that number goes into this box here. We're looking at all 4 years of college. We're not just looking at one. So the total parent resources is going to be everything that you can comfortably direct towards this one student without robbing retirement, without eating beans and rice, without robbing your other children of their college fund. Parent loans, we want to keep at zero. There are a lot of reasons for this. Mainly, it's in your name, and it can really delay retirement. Also, interest rates are very high. The third category is student resources. So in this box, we put student savings that they will be spending on college. This is not student savings that they'll be spending on spiritware and pizza. And then a monthly work study or a part-time job that we are expecting them to use to pay for tuition. So you may say, well, you can keep half your part-time job money for your fun and enjoyment, but we need $100 a month toward your tuition and fees. So that may be $100 a month on average across the year, whether they earn it all in the summer or they earn it throughout the year. That may be as much as $5,000 toward college that they can contribute and have some skin in the game. So this number is not going to be a large number, but it should be a number, we think. Student loans, a conversation to have with students about how much they should borrow should always start with how much they're going to earn. So this is sort of a rule of thumb, or I guess we don't say rule of thumb anymore. This is a guideline that you can use in talking with your student about borrowing money. The idea is don't borrow more than you're going to earn your first year out. So if you're majoring in computer science, for instance, you can borrow up to $76,000 across the whole 4 years because you're going to earn enough to pay that back when you get out. If you're studying education, we expect an annual income starting out of around $38,000. That's a national average. It's not necessarily true in every community, but you wouldn't want to borrow more, or your loans will be more than 10% of your take-home salary. So this would be a guideline, and this would be why some students take out more in loans than others. It also helps students keep their total loan repayment at 10% or less of their income when they get out of college. So there are lots and lots of different careers, and the starting salary information is collected by the U.S. Department of Labor. It's possible for you to look up starting salaries for almost any major. This can be tricky if your student's going in undeclared, but it also can start a conversation about borrowing money in a conservative way if you don't know what you're going to study, so as not to get stuck with high loan repayments. I do like the first two loans on this slide, the Stafford loans, whether subsidized or unsubsidized. Look at these interest rates. They're reset annually, but where else is an 18-year-old student going to get a 2.75% interest rate for anything? They're just not, especially uncollateralized. So these interest rates are very, very low. The total amount they can borrow is also pretty low, $3,500 for a freshman, $5,500 for a senior. Even unsubsidized, you can borrow a bit more, but that would be my first stop for loans, and I would really recommend almost any student to take these loans because they're small, they're cheap, and you're free to pay them back at any time. The loans are in the student's name, so it would build their credit score. And if you took out the Stafford loans, the subsidized Stafford loans, every year you would end up with about $27,000 in borrowing, which is not an unreasonable amount of loans for a student to have. So we would just go ahead and put $27,000 on the student loan line. This, again, is for all 4 years. And other help, which is the final category, would be grandparents, other members of family, and then college in Colorado, which is a per credit hour payment from the state directly to the university for Colorado students who stay in our state for college. So that's where we add these numbers in. And you can see in this sample family, the parents' resources added up to $57,000. The student resources across all 4 years of college added up to almost $10,000. The students only taking Stafford loans, they had other help. This number right here, this $98,000, this is their 4-year pre-approval amount. So they want to be looking at schools that are costing under $25,000 a year, all in. It doesn't mean the school costs that today. You can go to Duke, which costs $76,000 a year. I think it might be $80 now. If you can get Duke to come down to $25,000 a year. So this is what you can afford to pay. It doesn't mean that's what the school's charging. It's going to depend very much on merit aid if it's not a highly selective school, and on need-based aid if you have need. So that's college pre-approval. The College Opportunity Fund, I mentioned briefly, it's one of the many sources of money for students. And some of the amounts are very small, like the College Opportunity Fund, I think it's $35 per credit hour. I know that at Littleton High School, where our son went and where our daughter will go, the counselors automatically sign everybody up for this. So it's not something you have to actually go and do, possibly, but I would check with your high school. Essentially, they sign you up for it, and then when you pick a school, you basically say, this is the school I'm going to. Please connect my Colorado Opportunity Fund money to this school, and it gets paid right there on your tuition statement. You can see that as a credit. What other sources of credits do we have? I mean, we're all hoping for grants and scholarships. And what does that really look like? Well, athletic scholarships and free rides are a source of money, but not for very many people. The complete free ride is less than half of 1% of all students. But about 48% of people are getting a grant. That's need-based. The average amount of the grant is about $6,000. So even a need-based grant isn't likely to pay for everything. And then merit-based grants, we see about 58% of students getting a merit-based grant, and the average size is about $8,000 a year. So with CU and CSU costing just over $25,000 a year, need-based and merit-based grants can help. They can cut that about in half, but they're not going to pay for everything. So just kind of right-sizing our expectations around all the scholarships out there, or, getting a free ride. It's wise to know what the actual stats are and not sort of what we wish they were. Athletic scholarships aren't that generous. My son is actually playing lacrosse, but he's not getting any money at all. And it varies between men and women. You can see it's better to have an athletic daughter than an athletic son when it comes to scholarship by sport, at least in Division II schools. The good news about that is if you saved enough for college and you do get an athletic scholarship, you can remove the money in your 529 plan equal to the amount of the scholarship without any penalty. So that's nice. You're not penalized for having saved and getting a scholarship, which is terrific. One strategy that I'm seeing more and more people do is this. This graph's actually kind of confusing because it starts with age 18-year-olds down here and then moves on to newborns over here on the right, which is a little confusing. But the basic idea is this green bar shows you what you might pay if for a 4-year degree if you started at a community college for 2 years. Compare that to the purple bar, the expected price of a newborn going to a 4-year public college. And you can see why people are starting at a community college and then transferring to the 4-year college that they'll get their degree from. It's cutting the price of college almost by 40%, 39%. It's a pretty significant savings, and it's a great route, especially for those students who maybe aren't quite ready for the whole living away from home and managing everything on their own, or they don't know what they want to study and they want to try a couple things. starting out at a community college can be a real money saver. So now that you've seen different strategies and hacks, and you know what quadrant you're in, you know what techniques to follow, which of these techniques might work best for you. So again, with that high merit, low need, where so many of our clients are, non-need merit aid, very significant, private scholarships, being very careful with your school selection, whether that means community college for 2 years or looking at the highly selective colleges very, very carefully. If merit is your student's main strength, the highly selective colleges will not give you any money for that. So that those schools may or may not be within your reach. But spending money today on tax prep and being very wise about your tax opportunities over the next 2, 3, 4 years is often the best approach regardless of your income. So that's where we are here. We have 2 bonuses for you if you would like them. One is called Having the College Money Talk with Your Child. It's a PDF. That's a brochure that helps you kind of walk through this tricky conversation. I know there are other harder conversations we have with our kids, but talking about money, especially because they often do have questions, they just don't know how to ask them. So having the College Money Talk can open dialogue that can be very helpful and can help folks avoid heartbreak in the future where expectations aren't managed. And I recommend having the College Money Talk before high school, so 9th grade or possibly 10th grade summer, and not delaying that until the child gets into school. And then second of all, the College Money Report. It's free on our website. You put in your information and it takes about 5 minutes, and the College Money Report will deliver a customized feedback to you based on the 3 colleges that you think you may want to go to. It will also suggest 3 more that you might not have considered yet, and it will help you navigate through EFC and paying for college.